Yes, thank you. Hi everyone, my name's Sachin. I'm from the charity called SpecialEffect. So I'm an occupational therapist. Whenever I mention that, in the UK anyways, they're not quite sure what we do. But we basically help people to access things that they do, activities for daily living. But I sort of specialized in the gaming side of things and assistive technology. So that's why we're here today, just to make it more aware to people about how people who can't use standard controls would access games. I'm just going to pass you over to Michael because he's actually going to start the presentation, but then you'll be hearing from me again soon.
So hi everyone, thank you so much for taking the time to come to our talk, and thank you Nordic Games for hosting us and inviting us to give it. So my name is Michael Nelson. I am what's called a technical specialist. So throughout the talk, you're going to see quite a few interesting gadgets and gizmos, all designed around helping people with very complex physical challenges, disabilities, conditions, to enjoy the wonderful world of gaming and sort of commune with their friends, join in, and express themselves as who they are. So a large part of what I do is support the occupational therapist with the latest technology, always on the hunt for a new gadget that might be able to help someone in a new way. And also I do a lot of work with feeding back to developers, because we've been going for about 20 years. So we've got a lot of experience in doing this. So a large part of my job is articulating and communicating with developers to have those conversations about how can we make our games more accessible? How can we widen the door so that the most number of people can enjoy these beautiful worlds that we spend so much time creating? So without further ado, rather than listen to me trying to ramble on about what the charity does, we've just got a nice video where our service users can tell you in their own words exactly what it is that we do and really what it means to them.
With my disability, I'm limited to do things. I don't want to sound like a gameaholic, but it was one of the only things I could do for enjoyment.
SpecialEffect is an amazing charity who help people with disabilities to access gaming again.
Yes! I think it was my wife that told me about a charity that could help me to continue to play computer games. Yeah, just got in touch, and it's been an amazing journey ever since.
Go away, you bad guy.
Once Daddy got the equipment, that was her off, and her words were, "I'm now a gamer," and she's been playing it and having a time of her life.
I can't do a lot by myself, but I can play video games on my own, which gives me a good sense of independence and achievement.
It has been important for me to have the ongoing support from everyone at SpecialEffect because as I've grown up, they've helped me by adapting how I game.
No matter what NG throws at me, the guys at SpecialEffect come up with solutions to allow me to still play games. Now we've been doing some really amazing work with arcade controller games, and it's so liberating for me.
So I'll be honest, I didn't think SpecialEffects would be able to help me, but they tried different angles, different positions, and they made this brilliant system that I use today.
It's too good to be true. They can do this. It was like, oh, you got a new toy at Christmas. Gaming is fun, and that's the most important thing to me, is having fun.
If I hadn't had the chance to game and be involved with SpecialEffects, I wouldn't be in my games development and coding course at college because it opened my eyes to what I can actually do.
Games are a way to escape whatever is happening in general life and allow you to explore new places in a fun way.
It's changed my life, honestly.
In the world of gaming, anything is possible.
Thank you very much. So I think Tiago said it best at the end there. In the world of gaming, anything is possible. When you're on a screen, when you're communicating with your friends, when you're joining in, the person on the other side of the screen, they don't know if you've got cerebral palsy or a spinal injury or what's going on with you. You get to just be your own self, your personality, your embodiment, and express who you are. And you get to join in, especially if someone has a physical challenge, physical disability, they might not be able to go and play football down the park with their friends. So being able to join in with brothers, sisters, friends, family on Mario Kart or FIFA or whatever it is can be so powerful and such a fantastic way to communicate and just interact with the world. So like we mentioned, we are a charity. We're based out of Oxfordshire, UK. The way that we work is we have several projects, but the first one we'll talk to you about is called the Loan Library, which is where we travel around the country with a team of occupational therapists and specialists like myself to give people bespoke, tailor-made, adapted gaming setups. So that means someone can get in touch with us and they say, hi, my son's got cerebral palsy and he really wants to play Baldur's Gate or whatever it might be. Is there anything you can do to help him play? And we will physically drive out to their home or hospital or wherever they might be and give them a one-to-one assessment for as long as it takes to give them the controls that work for their body and their challenges, to give them the absolute best control and over that game. We will then loan that equipment out completely free of charge, and that service is lifelong. So we will see people from the age of 3 to 83, and we will see you as many times as you want. We see people weekly, monthly, yearly, as they age, as the games they want to play change, as the technology changes. We are there every single step of the way to make sure that that person is able to play the games they love, play with the friends that they love, and be the person that they want to be in the world. So like I said, everything we do is completely free of charge. So at no point in our 20-year history has anyone ever been charged a penny for anything. Not the assessments, not the equipment that we loan, not the advice that we give to developers, and no one ever will. We are entirely supported by people doing fun runs and 24-hour streams and things like that. So if you're interested in helping us out, feel free to get in touch. So we have two main projects we're going to be talking about today. The first one, as I mentioned, is called the Loan Library Project. You can see this gentleman here. He's actually in our office having an assessment done so that he will have a team of specialists around him, therapists, working with him, playing through the game, seeing where the difficulties are, and finding the exact controllers, the exact joysticks, buttons, switches to work for him to enable him to play. We have a second project, which Sachin works on, called Stargaze. And this is a very similar thing, but it's aimed more at acute situations. So this is in intensive care. So this is very often days or a week after someone's just had really the worst day of their life. They've just had a terrible accident or a serious diagnosis, and their mood is very, very low. And it's often said that the first charity, at least in the UK, that someone in this situation will see is the air ambulance. And the second charity is very likely to be us, to try and get in there and give them things like communication, help them speak to the doctors, help them express themselves, help them deal with the mental anguish that's going on in that situation, and more importantly, communicate with their families, tell their loved ones that they're okay, and communicate what's going on for them. We do have some other projects. We won't be talking about them all today, but just to touch on them, we have one called iMine, which some of you may have heard of. This is a free to download eye-controlled interface for Java Minecraft. So you don't need a special version of Minecraft, just regular old Java will do. And if you go on our website, you can download and install iMine, and it means that even if you can't control any other part of your body other than your eyes, you can still enjoy the entirety of Minecraft. So you can build, you can create, you can express yourself, and join in with the conversations that happen around that community. Another project we have, one that's very close to my heart, is Bubble Busters with this little white robot there. If anyone's from Norway, you might recognize that little guy. He's from a Norwegian company called No Isolation. It's called an AV1, and Bubble Busters is our project to help tackle medical isolation. So when COVID hit, we were all stuck inside, and we could really feel the sort of difficulties of that. This project is aimed at helping young children with cancer. So we're talking 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, who, when you're that small, missing a year or two of school, of friends, is absolutely devastating due to chemotherapy. It's too dangerous for them to go outside. So this little robot avatar gives them a physical space presence in the classroom. So they're not just a screen in the corner, sort of passively watching their life go by. They have a physical active engagement. They can go into the break, they can go on school trips, they can get involved and have a presence and be remembered. And it really helps with the anxiety of returning to class, because for a lot of the kids, it feels like they never actually left. So they get to stay in touch with their friends. 3 projects we're going to touch on a little more today is obviously eye gaze games, as our talk suggests, which Sachin will be talking you through in a moment. And finally, game access info and the dev kit. These are resources for developers, because we completely understand this information can be quite difficult to get hold of if you're not working with people with complex needs day in, day out. And a lot of people have the desire to make their games more accessible. You just need a bit of guidance, a bit of making sure, how do we know that we're making the right decisions? So that's what they're for, and I'll be talking about those towards the end. So according to Xbox research a couple of years ago, there's about 3 billion gamers in the world. 450 million of them identify as having some kind of disability. So that's everything from, say, maybe a ligament damage in a finger, all the way up to the people who have what's called locked-in syndrome, where maybe you can only move your eyes, or possibly not even that. So it's an enormous population of people that are currently being underserved. And these are also the people, these are only the ones who already identify as a gamer. So there's a who knows how large silent majority of people who have never had the opportunity to game because the games haven't been accessible. So it's an enormous population of people who could potentially be helped by simply having a few small adjustments to video games and an understanding of the technology to get them involved. So we can't help everyone. We're quite a small team, so we do collaborate with game devs. So we've worked on the Xbox adaptive controller with Microsoft. We've also worked with Sony on the Sony Access controller, and we've also worked with Logitech to make the buttons and joysticks for those controllers. And like I said, we also work with game development studios as well, advising on settings. And I'll pass you over to Sachin for the iGaze game section.
Thank you very much. So another way that we help people with disabilities is we made this website. I think it was 2020, 2021 when it was released. It's called iGaze Games. Bit misleading because these games can actually be played with not just iGaze but also different access methods. So this was the original website. There's just a few games on there, but they can actually, if you did plug in like a chin joystick, which was moving the cursor around, you could just use that to play the game. But hopefully, when I click this, they should show a bit of a video showing the types of games on there. They're quite simple ones, but it just, mainly because there was nothing really available out there for people to access at this stage. There's a lot of cause and effect, a lot of, I mean, there are some games now, it's a lot better, but I think they range from like hundreds to thousands of pounds, which is, I think, is like 10,000 Swedish kronor, so it's quite expensive. So we just thought we'd make these games, put them out there for free, and a lot of people are playing them. So I'll just show you a quick video.
Play our free online games with eye movement alone using an iGaze camera. Customize your controls when you start and as you go. Compete with other players around the world with our online leaderboards, or play 1v1 matches online or in person. Also play with touch, mice, keyboards, game controllers, or accessibility switches. The games are also coming to iOS and Android mobile devices. Visit iGazeGames.com to play.
So these handful of games, you might have seen from the video, they're being played in very different ways. So I just thought it'd be good to give you an overview of how people with disabilities play things at the moment. So you'll hear me say the word switches a lot. Switches are basically like buttons that can be triggered to have an output. So this is Suzanne. She's playing on a Xbox console, but she's got those red circles are showing where the switches are placed. So most commonly, they are placed on the headrest. So you'll often see two switches placed on the left and right side. And you can do a lot with just two switches for general computer access, but as soon as you get into consoles and gaming, when there's like 16 different controls and things, we sort of have to split the controller apart and put it around them. So she has a high spinal cord injury. She can actually move her arms, but she can't grip very well. So she's got an adapted joystick for the left joystick, and all the buttons are placed out around her so she can hit them by moving different parts of her arm. And this is Lucy. She's got muscular dystrophy, so she can only do very slight movements with her fingers. So switches come in different shapes and sizes. So she's got very lightweight, we call them ultralight switches. They just have a much smaller activation force. I think it's like 5 grams or something, but that she's got them placed around, some by her foot, some by her feet. And all these switches are connected to what we call a switch interface. So the most common one, and we rely on quite a lot, in 2016, I think it came out, is the Xbox adapter controller. Basically, you can plug these switches into these ports. I think this laser works. These ports up here, you might be able to see it, but they are labeled with what button it is. So it's quite easy to know what you're plugging in and what the output will be. But since that came out, a lot of different companies have been releasing their own. So Nintendo have a third-party controller that does a very similar thing. There is a Sony one as well. There's not a picture. You might see it coming up, but you'll see very different sizes of switches. They can be mounted on plates. We use quite a lot of camera equipment because they're quite sturdy and allows us to position things and not worry about them. And this is Sam. So he started with a combination of switches and joysticks, but he had motor neuron disease. So as the disease progresses, he did eventually have to go on to using eye gaze. So some people use physical hardware to access things, and other people use software, so things like eye gaze to be able to trigger the buttons as well. And on the opposite spectrum, there's adaptive setup. So the setup that we leave might not be the finished product. So this is Matthew. He was in hospital it was a head-on collision. He was a cyclist, but the only movement he had when we initially saw him was just his right index finger and a little bit of foot extension, so he could actually click a switch on his foot there, and that would act as the left click, and then for the mouse cursor to move, he would use this joystick here. And his initial biggest concern was making his needs known because he had a ventilator in, so he couldn't speak. So he just wanted a keyboard to be able to type out what he wants, and then he would click that speak button here, and it would speak out his needs and wishes. And eventually, he wanted full access to his Netflix and something called GCN, which is like Netflix for cyclists, lots of cycling shows and things. So we put that on there, and he actually got a lot more movements, and he brought the switch by his foot all onto one sort of Velcro board, and you can use all of that with his right arm. So it's just showing different ways that people access things. So going on to the main part of the talk is the mobile game side of things. So we brought these eye gaze games that we made from the website. We work with a company called Sun and Moon Studios to rebuild them in Unity and then release them for Android and iOS. And the main reason we did that is accessibility settings. We realized we reached a point, if you buy a phone, as long as it's not longer than 5-year-old phone, they've all got pretty good accessibility settings now. They've all sort of caught up and settled a little bit. So this slide, I'm just going to quickly show you what sort of settings are available on a phone. If you've got newer phones, if you go into the settings, they might not be labeled in the right places, but they are there. So things like switch access. So this would be clicking a button and this sort of blue or, it highlights a region, and then when you click it again, it will go on to the next one. So you could use that with 2 switches, so one for scanning, one for selecting, or you can actually have it just using one switch. So you press it once, it will sort of scan through all the options, and then when you click it again, it will select it. So eye tracking, you might have seen this on an Apple advert. They brought out eye tracking. They initially brought it out for a device called TD Pilot. It's by a company called Tobii Dynavox, which I think they're actually Swedish, are they? Yeah. They might be quite common here, but even in the UK, this is the trackers that everyone uses there. So all these eye tracking settings sort of link with this device, but they did also have a way of tracking your eyes using the inbuilt camera here. It won't be as accurate as having a dedicated, infrared camera there, but it does work for some people, as long as it's positioned right and there's not too much lighting. And there's camera switches, so it can detect facial gestures to activate a switch, so it doesn't always have to be a physical button. And the list goes on. So there's pointer control. So if you plug in a mouse, we use a lot of joysticks, which act as a computer control method. Head tracking, gamepad support, and even third-party software. So if you're using, especially Android, they allow for third-party apps that you can get from the Play Store to be used as, they come under a setting called accessibility apps, and you have to enable them. But you can use third-party facial mouses, and because Android is such a wide ecosystem, as long as you can get to the Play Store and download this app, Switch Access will work on your Android device. And even on-screen touchpads. So if you're not able to access the full area of the screen, and you can only access, say, the bottom left like this, if you swipe like this, it will sort of act as a trackpad on a laptop and move a cursor around the screen. There's a lot on here, so I'm going to take a drink. So what access methods works at the moment? So if your mobile game isn't built to support anything, the pointer control will still work, because it's basically emulating a click on a screen. So if we plug in that joystick and it can control a pointer around the screen, it will still be able to play your games. But it does depend on the type of games as well. So we'll go into a bit more about the game mechanics that we've made to try and make the game more accessible. But you'll know a lot of mobile games, they're not made to be played with point and click. And another way people get around is using switches. And that does still work. So that line that came across, that will come first, and then when they press the switch again, another line would come down, and then that sort of selects where they want to point the cursor. So even if they can't use a joystick and they just have one button, they can use their head to sort of find the X and Y and place the cursor of where they want. And you can sort of see it being played for Candy Crush here. On iOS, it's called the gliding cursor, but yeah, you can see the line sort of coming down and across. And Candy Crush isn't made for switch access, like you can't scan through using inbuilt switches, but you can still access it through glide cursor. And this is someone else using a chin joystick to play Candy Crush. We actually had to use a very specific version of Candy Crush, which actually highlighted the area, because on the standard version, I don't think it highlights as clear, because obviously it was made for swiping rather than tapping. So that's where the eye gaze games come in. So we realized there are all these settings available. It's just that maybe not necessarily everyone knows about them, or the game hasn't been designed for them in mind. So we released all these games to work with the settings. So you'll see it supports all the different access methods that I've mentioned before. This is OpenDrive, and then it's the same game being played in 3 different ways. So someone with eye gaze could play the same game as someone who would use just a Switch, and all the game supports gamepad controllers. So gamepad controllers could be the adaptive controller that we mentioned before, or this is actually a one-handed controller. So that joystick has been sort of put in its own housing, and that can be placed anywhere, usually by the chin, but anywhere that they can still move that joystick around. But how do we get about sort of designing a game for people with disability? Because disability is quite a wide range. You throw the word out, but it's sort of hard to see how someone with cerebral palsy might play in the same way as someone who can use a gamepad. So we designed the games with different access methods in mind, and we thought we'd just give complete full player agency over what settings that they can choose. So the first one we added was a classic and precise mode. So this is precise mode, and it's made for people who can say they're using a mouse cursor or they're really accurate with their eye gaze. You'll see they're able to scan across these, and when you select the right column, you can just drop it in to play 4 in a row. But the precise, that was a classic mode. No, that was a precise mode, and this is the classic mode where you would have 2 big buttons on screen. So this is for people who may not be able to access such a small target and they need bigger targets for touch, or for those who need bigger targets for eye gaze. And all these UI elements on the screen are accessible through switch scanning. So when you press the switch, it will highlight in that sort of yellow box around the item that you want to select. And both of them can be changed pretty much on the fly. We just added a button here. And when you tap that, it will sort of change the method that you can swap between classic and precise modes. Just 2 more examples of games. So this game is called Badger Badger. It's like a tower defense game. So on mobile, if you've played any tower defense games, they would completely rely on you being able to swipe across the map to be able to get from one end to the other and place the items. And the way we got around it for eye gaze users and Switch and joystick users is by adding really simply just arrows that they can access instead. And it just means that they're able to get across the screen without needing to do swipe gestures, which is basically the limiting factor here. And the final example is Mole Miners, which is like a brick breaker game. So you'd sort of line up where you want to shoot, and then you click the shoot button here. So each game has its own accessibility settings as well. So we've got that precise mode that I mentioned earlier, and you can have slow mode, unlimited balls, and automatic cannon movement. And there are some moving elements like these little trolleys at the bottom here. They'll move, but you can turn those off. Again, just giving them complete freedom to choose how they want to play the game. So this is how we overcame, there's a common problem with eye gaze called the Midas gaze, which is sort of, basically you don't want to trigger things accidentally just by looking at it. So you'll notice anywhere in this region, if you look here, nothing happens. But as soon as you're in this sort of sector here, you'll notice that arc will be controlled and moved around. So this is an example of precise mode, if they do have the precision to be able to access such a small target. But there's also classic mode. So if they need large on-screen buttons, there's 2 here, and then you can press the fire button here to move. So this sort of gives players options again to be able to pick and choose what's comfortable for them. And if they can only access one switch, or they can only touch one area of the screen, there's automatic cannon movement. So that arc will slowly just start coming down and back up again. And all you have to do is press the button at the right time. And just to finish off, I'm just going to leave some links that we've come across that are quite useful for developers, because it is quite new, because I think last year when someone else on the team did the talk, they mentioned you had to use a very specific build of Unity, like an old build of Unity that supports these. But I believe Unity have come out and actually built upon their current version of Unity actually supports switch control. So if you are a iOS developer, if you go onto the Apple website, they've got a whole section on switch control. And a specific API that you can use to sort of make, like if the button on the screen is just purely graphic, it won't get picked up by switch access within the settings. So what you have to do is sort of give the elements the right labels. If you go onto the Apple website, they'll focus a lot on voiceover, but with iOS anyway, if you build it to work with VoiceOver, which is their voice access method, it will also be picked up by switch access and gamepad and things like that. And there's actually a great talk that I'll link at the end. Someone from Unity did to sort of, basically show the hidden elements that are hiding behind a game, and it's not being picked up just because they haven't been given the right labels and traits. And Android, they've got Android Code Labs. It's very beginner friendly. If you want to work through, it's just like an example app that they have, and you sort of work through how you would make them accessible for the settings that they have. And there's a really good, by Android developers, YouTube video series, just 15 videos on sort of breaking down the accessible settings on there. They do focus a lot on the general visual accessibility as well, but there is a small section about switch control on there as well. And lastly, I'm just going to hand it over back to Michael, because he mentioned right at the start something called the dev kit that we make, and he's just going to talk a bit more about resources that SpecialEffect has made for developers out there who want to know how to not only make mobile games accessible, but fully fledged AAA, or if you're making a more console-type game, more accessible.
Yeah, so you've just seen quite a few different technologies, eye controls, all sorts of joysticks and on-screen buttons, and we're very aware that that's quite a lot to try and implement into your game, especially if you don't have people to be testing with. So as Sachin said, we've been doing this for 20 years, and we've made this website. It's called the SpecialEffect Dev Kit. Just Google that, it will come up. And what it is it's kind of everything you'd need to know about making your games accessible, broken down into the corresponding module. So it's a series of videos that will show you not only what other game developers have done to solve these issues, but also hear our thoughts on why you might want to solve it this way or that way, or what the challenges might be. So it's a really great resource, completely free to use. If you're having those kinds of questions, if you're working on movement in your game or the UI, and you're wondering, how can I make this more accessible, or I just want to double check, it's a fantastic resource to help you do that. So we've got a short little video to explain a little bit and show you what it does.
The SpecialEffect Dev Kit is a new resource for game developers who are looking to improve the motor accessibility of their game for players. We created the Dev Kit to share with developers the specialised knowledge and experience the SpecialEffect team has gained from working directly with players, building an understanding of the barriers they face and options that can help, and to showcase the work developers have done to create innovative and accessible ways of interacting with a game using options they've provided. Even when using an adapted controller, players may still face barriers within games. Through a series of videos, the Dev Kit covers many of the motor accessibility options we look for when assessing how accessible a game might be to some players. We hope that by breaking things down in detail, we can show developers throughout the industry how they might create and implement some of these options into their own games, and why they might be useful for players. We hope in turn that this resource will help developers to continue improving motor accessibility for their players globally. If you're interested in adding motor accessibility options to your game or a future project, please visit the SpecialEffect DevKit website to get started at specialeffectdevkit.info.
So it's something we're continuing to work on as well. So it's not just a series of videos. We've now added this new section called starting points. So rather than having to filter through every module one at a time, what you can do is you go, I'm a mobile developer, I'm working on an FPS or a driving game, and we'll have broken down the specific modules that we feel would best apply to your game and probably answer some of the questions that you're having to help speed up that process of getting to the answer that you're looking for. I mentioned we have another resource as well. So this is called the Game Access Info website. Again, if you just Google SpecialEffect Game Access, it should come up. And what this is, it's another free website, but this one, rather than being aimed at developers, it's more around the technology and the games that you've heard us talking about. So if you have questions around, okay, this eye control stuff looks really cool, how does it work? How do I set it up? What camera do I need? How do I plug it in? How do I get it working with my game? This website has those answers. Or if there's a new game coming out and everyone's talking about how accessible it is, like when The Last of Us came out, and you just want a quick breakdown of what is about this game that is making it so accessible, you can have a breakdown of what we feel are the settings and how they use them and how which problems are being solved by that. It's in a bunch of different languages, and we are continuing to add more as we go. And it's also extremely searchable. So you can search by just equipment. So even if you're not entirely sure what your question is, you can put in things like platformer game and it will come up with relevant articles. You can put in things just around equipment or eye control and it will come up with relevant information. So for instance, if you put in Android, you're working on Android and you want to do something with that, you can put that in and it will come up with everything we've put about Android. So that's the equipment that works on Android, how to set it up, any games that are standouts on Android, and we have an entire series on how you can get different types of controllers working on mobile, Android, and iOS as well. So just as we wrap up now, Sachin mentioned there's a couple other brilliant talks that we would highly recommend if you do have the time. That are worth, and you're interested in this, that are worth taking the time to watch. So one is by a lovely chap called Harry Cooper. So he is the game designer and developer behind our eye gaze games. So the examples that you've seen, he's the chap who actually coded them. So both of these are from GA Conf this year. And then Bianca Stannon did a fantastic talk from Unity around the real technical, like behind the scenes, getting into the code, how do we actually make these things work. So I'm aware we've been talking for a long time, so yeah, please just feel free to I'll leave that for a minute so you can scan the codes. And we've been mentioning a whole bunch of settings and controllers, and I'd just like to bring us back to what it's all about. Because I mentioned at the beginning that there's 450 million people with disabilities who want to play games, who want to join in and be part of things. And that's an enormous population, but also for us, the most important number is one. You can probably tell as we were going through that we knew every single person we were talking about by name. We've worked with them for years of their life as they age, as they grow, the different challenges they go through. And I just want to leave you on a message in a video where it really highlights the power that you as developers and publishers and game designers have to have an enormous impact in people's lives, especially when they're at a very, very low moment in their life and they need nothing better than a fantastic game to come into their world and pick them up again. So this final video I'd like to leave you with is a wonderful chap called Peter who we worked with, and I'll just stop talking because he says it better than me anyway.
My name is Peter. I've got primary progressive MS. I spent the first part of this year in hospital with pneumonia, which is why I ended up with a tracheostomy. And one of the lovely nurses in intensive care, she told me about SpecialEffect. And they came back to the hospital. They set up a tablet for me. I tried it and there's been no looking back. It's been amazing. got the tune control joystick which clamps to the table, so I can move the cursor, and then I've got a button which is like clicking a mouse. Now I've got full access to a tablet. I've got full support whenever I need it. It's been life-changing for me. When I was in hospital, I was able to use WhatsApp and send my wife a message just to say good morning. And she said it was lovely. It's the first message she'd had of me for 6 years, which made her day she thought it was amazing. So having the tablet just gave me a whole new world, gave me loads and loads of freedom. Games are important. I play a lot of games like backgammon, Othello, jigsaw puzzles and that sort of stuff, because you're stuck in the chair all day and it keeps your brain active. SpecialEffect is absolutely first class. It's an amazing charity and it's giving freedom to so many people. I'd just like to say a big thank you. Because, you give me my life back.
I really can't stress how much power you have as developers to impact people's lives, because 450 million, it's such a big number, but those are 450 million individual people like Peter who are struggling, who want to be involved, who want to be connected, who want to be playing the worlds that you're designing. And with just a few small settings, or even just an understanding of these controllers, getting them into the studio, having a play about, plugging in some buttons and switches and seeing how far we can get in our games, can lead to such fantastic innovations that can just blow that door wide open so that everybody is able to play these games. Everyone is able to join in on the fun and hang out with their friends and family and be part of it. But on that message, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. Like I said, if you do like what we do, you want to get involved, everything we do is free of charge, so feel free to ping us an email. Here's our contact details and our social medias, so please do feel free to get in touch. And if you want to fundraise or help out with that, our colleague Liam is from our events team sitting in the front row here. So if you're a fund runner or a streamer or whatever, and you want to get involved and help a few people out, then please just let us know. But honestly, from the bottom of our heart, thank you so much for your time. And yeah, thank you.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. I don't know about you, but before I open the floor for questions, I saw a little bit of your chat and I got emotional and I was like, no, not yet. You have to go back on stage. How do you guys not get emotionally invested in the people that you help?
We're not supposed to, but we do. We really. Our CEO, Mick Donegan, I think he cries at every video that we put up. He's a very sweet man. It's hard not to, because these are human beings at the end of the day, and they've all got their dreams, aspirations. They're amazing.
Yeah. Anyone else on the floor with another question? Yes, there's a question over here.
Hi. For custom engines, is there like any cross-platform switch API that you recommend? Or like things like the Steam input API, which is sort of made to be able to have arbitrary key maps for any kind of device. What's your view on that?
I'm going to be honest, unfortunately, I don't know how to answer that question, because I'm not a game developer, so that might be one for Harry Cooper. I don't know, Sachin, if you...
The only API I've sort of come across is the one made for Unity. I think that's, like if you're making an app or a game in Unity and you've put that API in, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they've made it quite easy for you to be able to sort of tell it the elements, and it should be cross-platform as well. Obviously, I've only talked to the developers. I actually haven't done the coding myself. I'm not that smart. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think it used to be one of those things which isn't very, like I mentioned, you had to use an older version of Unity, but now I think they've made it more accessible for you to be able to add these elements and traits into a button, so they can be made more accessible.
Well, what we can do to help answer your question, if you want to send us an email, we can pass it on to Harry Cooper or someone who'd be able to answer that in a bit more detail for you.
Cool. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions from the crowd? No? Oh, over here.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm a fairly competitive multiplayer gamer, and I have a physical disability. And I was just wondering how you make sure your like input devices and so on like meets the requirements of like a game's anti-cheat and so on. Because some months ago, I know I read something about our creators having people got wrongfully banned from the game because they had like different input devices and so on.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it is something that we've come across before. We have had service users get in touch with us and say, oh, the anti-cheats flagged me up, especially with sort of the kernel level anti-cheats that we're seeing now, like Riot Vanguard and things. So the first step is, you saw we use things like the Xbox adaptive controller, those switch interfaces. So by using a first-party controller, that can go a long way to bypassing, because it just gets registered as a regular controller. So the game it has no reason to pick up that you're using anything alternative. If you're using something like voice controls or eye controls where it's performing an emulated click or action, that's when people tend to get caught. Sometimes there's certain softwares that we have found that we can rely on to essentially not be flagged. A large part of what happens when that does occur is we have to reach out to the developer and say, just explain the situation. So we always encourage, if you are playing a particular game and you're finding you're having that difficulty, from experience, a lot of developers, if you simply explain your situation, they can add a listing to your account that basically will either stop you from being banned, or if you do get banned, it will flag up immediately that they need to undo that very quickly. Sorry, there's a fly around my face. Does that answer your question? Does that help at all?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right. We have time for one more question, if there are any from the crowd. Yes, over there.
Is anyone using EG sensors, like the brain interface?
Oh, the brain computers, like the Elon Musk.
Like no, not Elon Musk. Brainwave, the old one, or like Muse, where you have sensors.
Yeah, so with the cap that goes on the head and that type of thing. So
there's a simpler one where you only have the frontal cortex and the ear.
Yeah, and there was a lady who was like streaming and things with it. So in terms of the brain control interface, BCIs, as they're known, there's different types. There's ones that are sensors that go around the head, and there's ones that are chips that go inside the brain. People have started to use, exactly you said, some of the sensors to pick up those very simple signals. They tend to get turned into a button emulation. So it's literally like you would remap any other key effectively. We haven't done much with them at the moment because they're not currently super reliable, and a big part of what we do is we don't want to get someone's hopes up about a new technology and then have them sort of fail with it and have a bad experience, because that can put them off for life, especially when it's their first time gaming. So we're very careful about people's sort of well-being. However, with that being said, the technology is coming along really quickly. So I definitely think it's something that within the next couple years, we're going to start seeing more of, because it's the type of thing at the moment that's being done in laboratories, it's being done in universities, it's being done by very clever engineers at home in their own setups. But for those sort of 450 million people, they don't have that technical knowledge, and they might not have the technical experience around them to operate something like that and keep it working and fix the bugs with it. So at the moment, we're not seeing too much use with them, but we can definitely see the potential. And I think that is where accessibility, it is going to become an input method when it does get just that little bit more reliable, that little bit easier to understand. The UI is a little simpler so that people at home have a reasonable chance of doing it and troubleshooting it themselves.
Cool. I think that brings us to the time for the session. Thank you so much again, Sachin and Michael. And thank you so much to the crowd for interacting. Before I let you go, I would like to contribute to SpecialEffect. I don't have much money, but I do have 2 kidneys, and I'm pretty sure you could get some money for one of them. I'll survive. I'll survive. Do you accept or no?
I'm not sure we accept kidneys directly,
Okay.
but yeah, we do accept donations and things.
No worries, I'm just kidding.
generous.
Thank you so much to Sachin and Michael.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.